Devlin, Untamed.
Welcome to the podcast, people. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War, iOS. It's only sport. This is the highlights package of our 3-hour live radio show today, which aired 1 till 4 on the platform. If you want to follow us all over social media as well, Martin Devlin NZ, Martin Devlin Sport on Instagram. We put a fair few opinion pieces up on that as well. Today on the podcast, well, what the hell is going on, New Zealand Rugby? Who's in charge? Who should be in charge? Who will be in charge? Are the players going to revolt? Are the players going to take over the running of the national administration? And if so, would that work? What is Rob Nichol up to at the moment? We discussed that on the show. Special guest today, Greg Alexander. 265 NRL first grade games, majority of those for Penrith. It's squeezed in 37 for the Wars in between those two stints in Penrith. Of course, he played Origin. Of course, he played for Australia as well. Now, one of the best commentators of the sport from that side of the Tasman. Joined us for a good long chat about all kinds of things, including his belief that if the Warriors had not beaten Penrith, it was pretty much season over. So the fair chunk of that interview on the podcast for you. ATM, episode 84, normally on a Tuesday. I was off crook yesterday, Mark Watson, on the podcast for you, as well as Mark Evans, the CEO of the Fijian Drua. Are they making any money? How do they win away from home? What is exactly wrong with the competition? What is right with the competition? How would he change the competition? And what is the future of Super Rugby? Just some of the topics that we did discuss with Mark. We begin the show the same way every day. Tablets in hand, gather my flock. It's time for a sermon. So now the RPA want to run the whole of New Zealand Rugby, do they? Wow, what the hell? Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
What the hell is going on with the Rugby Players Association and this threat to split from New Zealand Rugby? You would have heard this in the sports news yesterday. The big vote is next Thursday on whether or not the provincial unions will accept the recommendation of the Pilco's report from last year. It all looks like going south real fast now. Rob Nichol and the RPA are threatening to break away and establish a brand new professional body to run the game, with the directors of that entity being appointed by the professional players. Is this just greed? Is this just the 250 or so professional players in the country wanting to get total control of the game so that they can then skive even more money out of it for themselves? What happens to the rest of rugby if that happens? The commercial side of the game is where, quite obviously, all the money is generated. If the fat cat fish heads and the players end up running everything, then what? The rest of the game relies on their benevolence, their ability to hand out cash for grassroots, community and clubs. Is that how it's really going to work? And what is the ultimate outcome for us fans here, who has always been completely neglected in every proposal? We are the game. There is no game without us fans. If no one's watching or engaging, then the sponsors don't sponsor. The TV rights aren't worth as much. The income levels will start to drop. Now, I'm not saying the Players Association is completely wrong here, but then neither am I saying that I think the provincial unions are either. The PUs quite rightly know that if they give up the power that they hold now over controlling our national game, they'll never ever get it back. The new structure, whatever that might be, isn't going to eventually decommission itself and reposition itself so that the provincial unions eventually get back to where they were and their voting rights actually decide on what happens in the game. And as for NZR itself here, this is New Zealand Rugby, the actual body itself that runs the game. Well, where is the CEO, Mark Robinson, in all of this? He's silent. He's absent, as always. What's he looking for, another consultant to write a review about it, is he? Because that's all he ever seems to do. What a shambles the game is in. With all the problems rugby has in front of it, the biggest right now is sorting out who should be sorting it out. And as for us fans, where do we sit? Well, just watch and wait until all these egos bitch and scrap over what they think they're entitled to and accept the fact that whatever we think and whatever happens, there isn't absolutely a thing any of us are able to do.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The platform.
Let's do some headlines and then straight into the league with Greg Alexander. 64 all at half-time. Pacers were down 11, 12 and then 15 at one stage. I think they've clawed their way back in this first of the best of 7 Eastern Conference Series. Lachlan?
I was going to start off with an NBA score update. Thank you very much, Martin. Do you want to apologise?
All right.
No? Okay. All Blacks prop Ofa Tu'ungafasi has extended his contract with the Blues for another 2 years until the end of 2026. Good news for Ofa, pretty damn good news for the Blues. The Warriors have welcomed back some of the injured players missing from last weekend's shock win over the Penrith Panthers in the NRL. They've named their side to take on the Dolphins. That game is on Sunday, naming the team, of course, last night. Team naming Tuesday. Chanel Harris-Tavita rejoins the bench, as does second rower Marata Niukore. That's a big addition, Marata Niukore, who could actually also play on the front row if the Warriors need, I'm pretty sure. He's a big guy. The Sydney Roosters have gone on the front foot to defend Kiwis hooker Brandon Smith and other players caught up in an online video over the weekend. I mean, they've called it a video scandal. I mean, they were live streaming themselves with these Roosters players. There have been claims of these players indulging in illicit substances, Martin. The Roosters have denied this, and they are threatening legal action over what they call defamatory claims. I've only seen a little bit of the video, and from what I saw, I won't lie, they look wired. They're not doing anything. You can't see anything, but their pupils are big, their eyes are big, and they look kind of white.
And there has been history with a couple of them of
Brandon Smith.
There you go.
The main one.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, until...
Let's just see whether
innocent
they
till proven
sue.
guilty.
Let's see who they sue and when they sue.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty. Mauricio Pochettino is out as Chelsea manager. The man who took over the club during last off-season. He is gone. Chelsea, despite finishing sixth in the end and having a pretty good finish to their campaign in the Premier League, thought, no, we want someone new, which makes no real sense. You know what that means? That Chelsea have had Tuchel, Potter, Lampard, the guy who was there just before Lampard, Pochettino. 5 managers in the space of 2 seasons.
They actually finished the season really well. They won their last 6 games or something like that.
They were unbeaten. Yeah, last 6 years, you're right. And they were unbeaten in something like the last 14 or 15. They only lost 1 in their last 14 or 15. Overtook you guys, overtook Newcastle on the table, some good wins. Tell you what, really hard done by. But if you're Mauricio, don't worry, because apparently he's on the radar of Bayern Munich, who still need to find their next manager, and also Manchester United, should you guys decide to move on from Erik ten Hag, which I won't lie would be a stupid thing to do. It's not his fault you're so rubbish. By the way, speaking of Bayern Munich, they are on the look for a new coach, of course. They've struck out with a few blokes. Guess who's on their radar now, Martin?
Erik ten Hag.
No, he is, but that came out a few weeks ago. Burnley boss Vincent Kompany.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're looking at him. Burnley got relegated, but apparently he's a good coach. I don't know.
Can't figure any of this out, man.
It's all weird. Football's a weird sport. By the way, halftime in the NBA, 64 all between the Celtics and the Pacers. So there won't really be any need for an update in the score in that for a little while yet. Back to some football. England manager Gareth Southgate showing his ruthless edge, but also exposed his concerns about injuries with his provisional 33-man squad for Euro 2024. Marcus Rashford is the big casualty, along with former Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson, who have both been axed, not included. Typically they are. Henderson probably shouldn't be in there. He's past his best, and he's playing in Saudi. Oh no, he's in the Dutch league now with Ajax, isn't he? But Marcus Rashford, I actually did think he'd still include him, but I guess that proves that you actually got to play well to get into the team. Cristiano Ronaldo is set to play in his 11th major international tournament. He's been named to the Portugal squad for the Euros. Some golf news. Scotty Scheffler, his arrest over the weekend at the PGA Championship will be reviewed by Louisville police. They will investigate if policies were correctly followed in the arrest of Scheffler. The 27-year-old was detained on Saturday morning New Zealand time after trying to drive into Valhalla Golf Club in heavy traffic and has seen his arraignment date rescheduled to Monday, 3rd of June. Arraignment, is that how you pronounce it? Arraignment, yeah. Just surfing some of these websites. Much else going on? I don't think so. So for the time being, Martin, that is what is making news.
Devlin.
Unbelievable! Incredible!
The platform.
Brandy Alexander, Greg Alexander, won a premiership with Penrith in 1991. Now he is one of the foremost commentators and comments people covering the NRL every weekend, right across Fox Sport and every program that they have. He joined us for a good long chat today about Brad Arthur, Wayne Bennett, best team in the competition right now. Who is going to be the Origin Blues spine, given it's only a fortnight to go before Origin number 1? Is Latrell going to play? Is he even going to play out the rest of the season? And the Warriors versus Penrith. His thoughts on all of that. Greg Alexander. Brad Arthur to start with. Are you surprised?
Probably not after the performance they gave up at Magic Round the second half, where I think Melbourne ran in 6 tries. It was pretty close at half time. They got themselves back into the game just on the break. But after a couple of their performances, the fact they didn't make finals last year after playing the grand final in 2022, I wasn't completely surprised when the news came out.
Well, we've had Demetrio gone and him gone now. Is it going to become a bit like the Premier League? Is it actually going to be like just, coaches last one season, maybe 2 seasons, and that's it from here on in?
No, I don't think so. I think new coaches coming in, it's unusual for them to only last a year. The fact that he'd been there 10 years, and I think he was, when he spoke last night on NRL 360, and I think he was, sort of philosophical about it. He said, well, I've had 10 years. This was my 11th. I can understand moving on. The results just weren't there. The coaches that were under pressure the most coming into the 24 season were Jason Demetrio, was Brad Arthur, and also Todd Payton, because all sides had failed in 2023 after having very good 2022. So there was pressure on those coaches. Todd Payton got a win on the weekend, and that broke a 5-game losing streak. So the pressure remains on Todd. Demetrio, we know, is gone, and now Brad Arthur.
Greg Alexander is with us on the platform. What do we make of the Warriors then? 4 losses in a row, a stunning performance against Penrith. But do we look at that Penrith side and say that was perhaps the worst that they've played in a couple of seasons? Look, yes, Penrith weren't good, and they led at half time, quite amazingly. And I was obviously watching with plenty of interest. We were on, the panel before the game, and I basically said, look, the Warriors season almost hinges on them beating Penrith, although it seems unlikely with the players that they're missing. And even though Penrith are missing, a couple of players, in particular Nathan, when you have a look at that Warriors lineup, the Warriors are missing 8 top liners. And you take Sean Johnson out of the equation, even though Sean hasn't been playing well. But you remove him and replace him with Tamari Martin, Chance Nickel-Cookstar at 5'8". We had Andrew Webster on the panel, and we questioned him on a couple of things with the Warriors game. And I said to Andrew, are you confident that Tamari Martin can get the job done? Because I haven't seen him do it this year. I said, I've watched Warriors games where he is barely seen. And Andrew Webster in reply said, yeah, but Sean's very dominant, and Sean will, and that's how we want Sean to play, both sides of the ruck. We want him to get the ball in his hands as much as often and as much as possible. And he said, maybe now with a little bit of responsibility on his shoulders, Tamari will step up. Well, he did. Tamari was great. And it was good to see. Tamari played at Penrith and has had such a tough road, but very good to see Tamari play well. Chance was great, running at 5'8". Tuapiki was excellent. And even though the forwards, Adam Fanua-Blake didn't have his usual game, which sort of, and when Wade Egan went off the field, boy, I thought we'll get these blokes, but that's not how it happened. The Warriors stuck in there, and even when Penrith did get their game together, which they did, after about the 50-minute mark, they put 8 or 9 sets together without making an error, which they had been previously, and they got to the lead at 20-16, and I thought they'd be able to close it out. But to the Warriors' credit, and they really needed that win to kickstart their season. With the Dolphins coming up this week and then going into the bye, I was saying on Saturday that they really need to reboot their season today with a win. They can't wait until next week against the Dolphins. If they can get the 6 points coming out of the bye, well, then they're in a much better position, because, if they didn't beat Penrith and for some reason the Dolphins were able to get the points, well,
I would say that would be the end of the Warriors. I don't think it's if they didn't do that, and they do have to, make the most of that win and then beat the Dolphins. They're back in it, the Warriors.
A couple of quick questions on Origin. We'll let you go, and we thank you so much for your time. Obviously the spine for New South Wales with so many injuries. How much of a worry is that with Origin, the first one, just a couple of weeks away now?
Well, it's. I guess it's really the number 7 is no one else's but Nico's. There's just Mitch Moses won't take the field this weekend, so Mitch has no chance of playing. He won't be picked without playing a game, and he hasn't played since round 3, so he's been out too long. So Mitch is a scratching, certainly for game 1, and without Nathan Cleary, that leaves Nico. And Nico's been in good enough form; he deserves a go. So he'll be the halfback. The 5'8" position comes down to I think there's 3 of them: Cody Walker, Jerome Luai, Matt Burton. I thought Jerome Luai, who was doing the same sort of job as what Tamari Martin did, coming into the 7, and I thought Jerome was probably Penrith's best player. So, but hasn't been in great form leading into that game against the Warriors. Matt Burton is the other one, the other possibility. It's a close call. It really is. Jerome's got the experience. Cody Walker's the incumbent. Hasn't been playing in the south side, but running last. I did see a bit from Cody in their game against the Cowboys that I thought he might be ready. I thought there was a 20-minute period there where he got South back into the game. He took the ball to the line. So being the incumbent and the man of the match out of Game 3, I'm almost leaning towards Cody Walker getting a start with Nico Hines. The fullback spot, well, they were taking promo shots over here with James Tedesco, so I'm assuming that James will be the fullback. And even though Dylan Edwards has been brilliant over the last 3 years, Clive Churchill, been one of the best players in the competition, the fact that James Tedesco is playing well makes it very hard for Dylan to break in. So you would think that Tedesco will probably be the fullback, and I guess the hooker's happy. And what they do with the bench, and whether they want to pick 2 hookers, I'm not so sure which way Michael Maguire is going to go, but there's your spine. The 5'8" position is the most contentious.
Finally, Latrell. What do you do with him? Does he play Origin or not?
I don't know. I'm not sure whether Latrell does play Origin. Even though the New South Wales are down centres. No Trebojevic, no Bradman Best, who tore his hamstring in Magic Round. We learned today that Tony Staggs has a broken rib and broke it at training, so he's not available. You could play Matt Burton in the centres if you wanted to. Crichton will be one centre. I think Crichton's locked in either left or right. It doesn't matter which side he plays on. And then you've got the pick from Jesse Ramian, Joseph Swaley, and also Latrell Mitchell. Not sure about Latrell.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Mark Watson apologised to me, episode 84, the ATM podcast, normally on a Tuesday. Today, though, it was. We talked about the RPA versus the provincial unions and what role New Zealand Rugby has got in all of this. A week tomorrow is the big vote. Are they going to accept Proposal 1, Proposal 2? And if it doesn't go the way of Rob Nichol and the players, are they really going to separate? Are they really going to form another organisation to run New Zealand Rugby? Is that going to work? Is this about greed? Is this simply just a power play? The players want more money, a get-rich-quick thing? Or is it them really with the benevolence and the kindness in their hearts to protect the sport in New Zealand and to foster our national game? Is it? Is it really? Here's Watto. The RPA dispute. Now what, Mark? You've got Rob Nichol saying that the Players Association wants to split and they want to run the whole game themselves.
Yeah, and I think Rob Nichol's a guy who doesn't mince words. I think Rob Nichol's a guy who will do this if, in fact, they don't actually put into place the resolutions from their own internal review. I think there's dangers in this as well. I still believe the players have too much influence. I still believe, as you've heard me say, that the only people that seem to benefit in this game are the players, and they seem to just be able to pick and choose. And yes, we don't have the game without them, but equally, they don't have anything without the rugby public. And so first and foremost, I think It's got to be about what the New Zealand rugby fan wants. And what we clearly want is a much higher level of engagement. We want all our competitions to be strong and healthy. And, you know, we don't want egos. And that seems to be the problem at the moment. It's the unions not wanting to give up power, or not necessarily power. They still want to retain having a voice. And I guess probably a lot of that is around the NPC as much as anything. And then you've just simply got egos. But look, you know, when you look at Mark Robertson, I mean, he should be the first guy that just resigns. This guy clearly lacks leadership. The whole organisation's in absolute shambles. You've got Dame Patsy Reddy. You're thinking, how the hell is she on the board? You know, she gets appointed because she's the former sort of Governor General, and it's just this lovely little box sticking exercise at the time. But, you know, a lot of these people that sit on these boards have these CVs that are so over-embellished. And, you know, they're happy with the status quo. They don't want to upset anybody. And what the game actually needs now, it's not an evolution. It actually needs a revolution. Look, hopefully this threat from Rod Nicol does bring some urgency to these discussions, and the original review that does get implemented, which is clearly what Rob Nicol does want. It's clearly what the Players Association wants. But, you know, where's the fan in all of this? Where do we get our say? I mean, you know, I've in recent times, Martin, I've just spoken to a couple of former All Blacks on radio programs, and I've said, look, can you come on? And they both said to me, Mark, I'd love to, but I don't actually watch it anymore. And that just, and you know, we talk about this every week, and that's just common with a lot of people. And you know, we've already talked about what Rugby League are doing and what Rugby League are doing right. But yeah, look, I think there's dangers if the Players Association takes over. I'm not sure how that's going to work in terms of you know, income, in terms of the commercial agreements that have been put in place. I mean, I just think there's a danger here for a lot of the existing corporate partners or commercial partners just to walk away from this saying, hey, we didn't sign up for this mess. We just signed up because you guys sold us a story, you sold us a brand fit, and all you're doing is diminishing that, and all you're doing is actually breaking down, 130, 140 years of rugby history in this country.
I just can't see how, if the provincial unions are disestablished and having any power base at all with the running of the game, so all you've got is Mark Robinson, his fish heads, and his endless consultants, reviews, committees, ex-coms, pathway managers, and just so many more hires at New Zealand. How does this actually work in terms of redistributing the money back to the areas of New Zealand rugby, the clubs, the actual unions itself, kids' games? Where does that all come from? Are we going to have to rely now on the benevolence of those players to say, okay, well, out of the hundreds of millions it generates, we take this much and we're prepared to give you this much? Because we all know where that ends, don't we? I mean, no one's ever going to hand out money that they think should be theirs to somebody else. It doesn't happen in life, in any walk of life.
Yeah, but I think the horse is bolted, Martin. I think you've only got to look. The only thing they are interested in is clearly the All Blacks. I mean, the influence that the All Blacks have on Super Rugby, the rest and rotating of players who have been All Blacks because they're tired. You know, we know this current crop and current board really don't want the NPC. They don't see it as being sort of... Well,
how do you get to be an All Black if you don't play NPC? What, are you just going to come out of a first 15 and play Super Rugby, are you? That's not going to happen.
No, but that's the mentality, Martin. I agree with you completely. I mean, I've always thought the point of difference with New Zealand rugby, if you talk to every other country in the world, we've got that extra layer of professionalism. You know, we're supposed to have first 15 rugby, we're supposed to have senior club rugby, we're supposed to have the NPC, then Super Rugby, and through that pathway, we produce some really, really good All Blacks. But this mentality is that, oh, look, we'll always find 15 players around the country. We're just happy with Super Rugby. We don't really care if the crowds turn up anymore. It's ultimately the All Blacks that are bringing the money in. This is just really an All Black trial, and these guys are, you know, really just at the mercy. The coaches and the players are really just, you know, just puppets, and the puppet masters are those running the administration. It is just, I don't even know how we've got to it, Martin. I said it last week. I mean, you look at the mistakes they've made with senior club rugby, you look at the mistakes they've made with NPC, and they're making exactly the same mistakes with Super Rugby. It's an appalling product. Yes, there's the odd appointment viewing game, but look, I've had friends who've gone to Eden Park recently to watch the Blues and said the atmosphere is just absolutely appalling. It's just dreadful. It's just the same old. And, you know, Mark Robertson needs to go. The board needs to go. Dame Patsy Reddy, show some damn leadership, woman. You know, you put your hand up. You said, I can do this. You know, it looks great on your CV. You love your Blazers. All of these board members, just resign. Just resign. We need people who are going to come and have some vision and actually say, hey, you know what? We are about the provincial unions, whether directly or indirectly, but primarily we're about the New Zealand rugby fan. And we are under siege at the moment. They just continually whittling away the very foundations that have made the game, for so long, so commercially successful.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute or so on each. And when we get reminded, we move quickly on to the next one. The RPA versus the PUs. How's this going to end, Lachlan, apart from disastrously? NBA Finals, are you impressed at the moment with the Pacers who are hanging tough? They're just a point behind with 8:19 to go. This is in the fourth. Boston 100, Indiana 99. And even if either of these sides win, are they going to be good enough to beat the Timberwolves, who my T-Dubs, who I've already earmarked for the finals? Pochettino leaving Chelsea. Miles spoke about that about 10 minutes ago. It's just weird, isn't it? I mean, look, I understand that in the Premier League, whatever your contract is, the only thing you need is the clause that says, when you get rid of me, you pay me this much. That's the only clause that counts in any of these contracts for football managers in England. NBA, I'll talk about that. Brad Arthur getting gone from Parramatta. And Brandy talking about the Warriors.
I was saying on Saturday that they really need to reboot their season today with a win. They can't wait until next week against the Dolphins. If they can get the 6 points coming out of the bye, well, then they're in a much better position. Because, if they didn't beat Penrith and for some reason, the Dolphins were able to get the points, well, I would say that would be the end of the Warriors. I don't think it's if they didn't do that, and they do have to, make the most of that win and then beat the Dolphins. They're back in it.
Let's kick it with what Greg was saying. Greg Alexander was up on the program. First interview we had this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Martin Devlin, Lachlan Moore, iOS, It's Only Sport. And you can jump the platform YouTube channel, or you can jump our Instagram page, our own Twitter site, or anywhere you find your favourite podcast and listen to that whole interview in full. Fascinating. He was exactly right, and I don't know how many people were prepared to say that out loud before the weekend as well. If the Warriors had a loss to Penrith, it was going to be 3-1-7. Then the Dolphins to come. The Dolphins are 7-3 at the moment. A loss to the Dolphins, 3-1-8. You get the bye rate. It doesn't matter. You're 5 below the 500. Are you coming back from that? This has absolutely reinvigorated the Warriors season. But the caveat on that, as Greg says, is got to win against the Dolphins. Go in against get a win against the Dolphins, get the bye, all of a sudden back on track. Still having to win, 9 out of the last 12 games, some of that. It's not going to be easy, but it would have been a complete and utter disaster if the Warriors had lost that game to Penrith, right?
It would have, yes, certainly. It would have ended the season then and there, because it's just the hole that they get themselves into, and you just can't, not many teams can get out of that hole. Probably a team like Melbourne, a team like Brisbane, a team like the Roosters.
Well, who this year, Lachlan, has won consecutive matches? The Sharks are on a 7-game winning streak. Melbourne did 6. Penrith did 6.
Sharks, yeah.
The Knights have done 4. I think that's the next best.
Probably.
So that was what Brandy was saying as well. It's been, kind of topsy-turvy in terms of the results. Like the Roosters win 3 in a row, then they lose a game. The Raiders win 2 or 3, they win a game. Your Broncos won 2 or 3, then they drop a game. It's only those 3 teams that have been able to get 5 or 6 wins in a row. And if the Warriors were in that hole where they need 10 or 11 wins out of the last 12 or 13 games, you're going to have to win 5, drop 1, win 5, drop. You see what I mean?
They've got 13 games left. And they've won 4. And in those 13, they probably need to win 9. Probably.
Okay. Yeah.
So
it's a tough ask. It's not, it's not guaranteed.
Well,
but it would have been bloody hopeless if we hadn't won that game against Penrith.
Well, you don't say we. And I said this on the show yesterday that it's brilliant. It's a tremendous win. It's an invigorating win. Hopefully, it's an infectious win for the entire club. The thing is, you can't just sort of talk it up and go, oh, look at that. You got to now keep going. That's the level you've just met. You need to maintain that level. And so they've got the Dolphins, which won't be easy, but they're at home. You'd like to think that's a win. Then a bye, and then you've got the Cowboys on the road, which so like with the Cowboys in their form, that's on the road in North Queensland. That's never easy to win up there, particularly against a team that scores points pretty damn easily. Then you've got the Storm and the Broncos in 2 of your next 3, and you've got the Dogs away not long after that. The Titans are sandwiched in there on the road, but the Titans are a beatable team. So, look, there's no easy games. Great, you beat Penrith, and that's wonderful, but you got to keep it up.
Yeah, agree.
It's the same with any team in the comp. Same with Cronulla. You just beat the Storm and the Roosters. You got to go and beat Penrith now.
That's right, and that game is on Saturday, 7:30, marquee matchup of the round. NBA Finals. It's still 1 point between the two teams.
Playoffs. It's playoffs.
Playoffs, I'm sorry. They call it the finals over there, don't they?
No, they don't. They call it the playoffs over there. They call
wins
the finals
out of the Eastern
finals.
Conference? Are you big on Boston?
I'm not as big as a lot of people are. I think they'd win this in probably 6 games, 5 or 6 games, because they have a habit of dropping a game at home that they probably should win. They've done that these playoffs. The thing with the Celtics that's it's sort of unfortunate. They can't really help it. Is they're not going to be pushed that hard in the playoffs. The Knicks, if they were healthy and got through the semis, the Knicks would have been a great matchup. But the Pacers defensively are horrendously
They're
unreliable.
non-existent. Yeah, they're terrible, aren't they?
They'll go toe-to-toe with you on offense, but they can't defend. So this isn't really a great matchup for Boston, assuming they win and get through to the finals, because then they're going to take on either a Minnesota team that suffocates you, that has played among the best ever in NBA history in terms of defenses, these playoffs. And then if Dallas managed to upend Minnesota, well then Dallas, geez, they've done a spectacular job knocking off the 1 seed, knocking off a talented Clippers team, and then knocking out a Minnesota team.
I don't give them hope, mate. I just don't think they match up big. They don't match up big. Who are they going to match up against Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert? Who's going to do that for Dallas?
Well, I agree with you, but the thing that Dallas have that
so up Kyrie's backside. It's almost embarrassing from this side of the microphone.
Coming from the biggest bandwagon fan
how much
of the
you
NBA.
love Kyrie?
I think Kyrie. Honestly, I love Kyrie.
I call him Kai now because you love him that much.
He's spectacular offensively. The thing about Dallas, the only way they're going to win that series is if their 2 stars essentially just can't stop making shots.
Well, they're going to have to get 35, 40 points a game.
You're going to have to put... Look, Anthony Edwards is a big body, and sure, defensively he's capable. He's not really known as one of the best defensive players in the league in his position. He's good, but Doncic will probably have a bit of a fun time with him, assuming he can play at a high level, because he's obviously carrying a bit of a nickel. And then you've got Jaden McDaniels probably on Kyrie Irving. They've got players that can match up with them. Minnesota are incredibly well-rounded, but I'm just saying that it's not out of the realms of possibility that Dallas, with their 2 incredible superstars, unlock that Minnesota defense, because they can do it.
Your reaction hearing today that Pochettino, he said he's leaving Chelsea. That means he's been archered out of Chelsea. Look, I mean,
if it's mutual consent, he's been pushed out the door.
That means he's been... All that has happened in mutual consent. Working in the media industry, it's the same. I mean, when you leave by mutual consent, what it is that rather than hang, draw and quarter you from the nearest lamppost, write terrible headlines about you and try and humiliate you in public, you're actually avoiding all of that and they're letting you walk free. That's all it means. He's been kicked. That's what's happened here. Where does he end up? Is he going to be Man United's new boss?
I don't know. I have no idea. I'd like to think...
He's going to end up somewhere.
I'd like to think you guys wouldn't move on from Ten Hag for your sake.
Same. He's a good boss, Pochettino. Where's he been in the Premier League? He's been Spurs...
He was at Southampton
Chelsea,
Southampton. Spurs. He did really well there. Then went to Spurs and obviously did well there with very little money to spend. Then he went to PSG.
That's right.
It was all right when he was there. Then he got sacked. And then he got the Chelsea job. I just think it's shocking. I think a guy who... Look, you look at what he was handed. He was handed a roster that had been together 5 minutes. A whole lot of young...
put together by another couple of managers.
It's not, exactly. It's not like you've been handed a playing group that has... I don't know, stable, experienced veteran players like the Liverpool squad, for example, right now. You've been handed a team that are so young and you're relying on these players turning into stars. And yeah, it's a rocky start to the season. To be fair, took them to a cup final, which they should have won, but they didn't. Took them to a cup final. They got to the semi-finals of the FA Cup and got knocked out by the team who's probably going to end up winning it. And they were unfortunate not to get a penalty in that game. And then they ended up finishing 6th in the league, finishing ahead of Newcastle and Man United, at an end-of-season surge that included, I think, only 1 defeat in their last 14 or 15 games and about 6 straight wins to end the season. They ended up with 19 wins and only about 10 or 11 losses, which, when you look at how rubbish they were at the start of the year, is a big achievement.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
He's just started to build something. Are you going to get rid of him?
Should Beauden Barrett be playing for the Blues? The question has an obvious answer for me, and that is yes. There's no question about this. If Beauden Barrett is back and training with the Blues, why won't he be playing? And now you can say, look, Perifeta's in there, Parry Plummer's in there, it's unsettling for the squad, all of this kind of stuff. Listen, the whole of New Zealand rugby, as we're continually being told, is based around the All Blacks. It's all about the All Blacks. Razor wants him available for selection to play for the All Blacks. That's in 6 weeks' time as the first test of the year. against England. 6 weeks. So between him coming back from Japan and him playing for the All Blacks, he's not going to play a single game of rugby during that time. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me. You know, look, New Zealand Rugby can move the chess pieces around on the board however they want, whenever they want, whoever they want, whatever they want. There are no rules. They rewrite the rules every single day to suit themselves. Why wouldn't you get that guy playing? The Blues have got 2 more round-robin matches and then 3 finals matches. If you're the All Black coach, wouldn't you be saying, I want to see that guy play?
Yes.
At
I
that
guess
level.
The argument then is, though, how fair is that the All Blacks coach...
fair, schmear, who cares, mate?
No, hold on. I'm playing devil's advocate here. How fair is it that the All Blacks coach gets to then tell Vern Cotter and his staff what to do in terms of their selections?
He told Rob Penny that he wanted Havili at 10.
I know, and Rob Penny...
Every single All Black coach in the past has told the Super Rugby coaches what they want.
Good for Rob Penny. He decided to do that. And did that work out? No, it's not Rob Penny's fault, not really Razor's fault, but sure, I mean, that did... He selected Havili at 10.
It doesn't mean
Vern Cotter has to do it.
Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, no, it depends what you care about. And look, this is almost a rhetorical question because I know what the answer is, because I'd answer this the same way you would answer this, the same way that most people would answer this. What matters more here? What matters more is it the Blues and their Super Rugby chances or the All Blacks and them winning matches? I know what the answer is because I think it's the All Blacks. But the point is that for starters, Beauden Barrett, it makes it, you need to give him game time before the All Blacks season. I totally agree with that because I don't have any real faith in the other Fes fives we have at our disposal. But if I'm the Blues and I've put together a good season, I'm not saying Beauden coming into it messes with the chemistry or whatever. I don't think he's a bad person and a cancer in the locker room.
I think he'd be welcome back. Everyone says they welcome back at training.
But look, if I'm the Blues and I'm Vern Cotter, I've got something really good going with Harry Plummer playing 10 at the moment. Never thought, to be honest, I'd really ever say much of that. Harry Plummer's doing a spectacular job playing first 5 Super Rugby. Perifet's had some injury troubles. I don't know what his status is at the moment, but I honestly would just be reluctant if I was Vern Cotter to throw him in right away as a starting 10. I'd like to think, and maybe it's something as petty and as silly as Vern Cotter being, I'm the head coach, I make the decisions. Now, if Barrett gets back into the team and starts playing, if it's Vern Cotter's decision, sure. But if Razor goes to him and says, you have to play him, if I'm Vern Cotter and saying, well, no, this is my team, it's not yours, I do what I want.
Yeah, I think it comes down to one simple thing, is that if we want him to play for the All Blacks, there are 6 weeks between now and that first test of the year. Give him game time. It just seems dumb not to do that.
I mean, but you've got to look at a bigger picture. Again, I'm not saying Beauden Barrett screws up the bigger picture of winning a Super Rugby title, but Vern Cotter's got a plan that didn't include Beauden Barrett.
Last topic, quick question. Brad Arthur, did he deserve to go from the Eels?
I don't know. A lot of people are saying he... I don't think you become a bad coach just like that. I don't think you become a good coach just like that. And he's been at the team since 2014, and they've gotten gradually better over the years, which culminated in the grand final in 2022. The Eels were rubbish. They were appalling. A terrible club before Brad Arthur took over as the coach. They went through a few head coaches, including Ricky Stewart, who couldn't make it work down there. I don't know. I don't know what coach turns up and gets more out of that playing group. Maybe it would have been probably Wayne Bennett. Apart from those big name coaches like a Cleary or a Bellamy or a Bennett, I don't know who they get that's better. Michael Maguire could be an option, but again, I don't know if he's significantly better than Brad Arthur, that he takes this team back into the top 4 and potentially a grand final.
Mark Evans, CEO for the Fijian Drua. First time that he's spoken publicly, all competition. So where exactly do they sit? Where does he see them in a couple of years' time? Can they potentially win this? Why can't they win away from home for a start? Do the Drua make any money? And the state of the comp as he sees it. All of these questions put to Mark Evans. Does the competition need changing, adjusting at all? Are you happy with it the way that it is?
No, it needs changing.
How?
No, I mean, well, it's too short. If I had to put, if you put my number one thing, it's too short. That's my number one comment. It's just not in market long enough to build a narrative.
So how would you keep going?
And I think you've really got to, and this will ruffle a few feathers, but if you're going to be serious about the tier below the international game, you've got to give it more. You've got to give it more time. I think you need at least a sort of 18-game regular season with however you want to then do your finals. And I think the problem with Super Rugby in the last 20 years, and this is not just in Super Rugby, I think it's happened in some other markets, such as my own of Wales, a complete obsession with the international game and the neglect of the tier below has come home to haunt people.
Just explain that further. Why do you think that is? How is that?
Has it happened, or why has it happened?
No,
well,
no,
it
no.
happens.
Just in terms of a fan, like how do we see that? How does that manifest itself?
Oh, right, okay. Well, if you're not in market for long enough, A, you don't produce enough content, and B, you don't build narratives and stories for fans to engage with, and it feels like an afterthought. And I'm still absolutely gobsmacked that there isn't, and I know we're trying to get there, and there's a lot of good people trying to get there, but it's been 20-odd years, and the competition has never had independent governance to drive it, either commercially or to fight its corner. Everything's been subsumed to the national team, and I say that about Australia, and I say that about New Zealand. I wouldn't say about Fiji, who just got in it. And if you do that, and it's not the only country that's done it, Wales has done that as well, don't be surprised over time, and it takes quite a while, if the thing withers on the vine to a degree. Now, I don't want to overstate this. I think there's some great football played in the Super Rugby competition. I think the product's pretty good, actually, and it can always be improved, and we could have a debate about actually not ball in play so much, going ball in play is fine. I think the length of the games and the time of the ball, when the game is stopped, is much more of the issue, but that's in the whole different argument. I think that what is the mistake that has been made amongst the monger of unions, who do, of course, control the competition through a JV or wherever it was back in the day when the South Africans were in it, everything is focused on the international game, and then Super Rugby fits in around it. Well, that ain't ever going to work, is it? It's a bit like people who think, well, all we've got to do, and I'm not making the point about New Zealand here, I could make it about Australia, I could make it about Wales, I could make it about a couple of other countries too. If all you are concerned with is the national team because you think that is what makes the money, over time, you won't invest or give enough space to other elements of the ecosystem. It will decline. And in my observation, that is what has happened in large part in the last 10, 15, 20 years.
How does that change then? How do you actually rearrange the headspace of the national unions in charge? For example, New Zealand Rugby. I mean, we're at the moment in this hideous situation where a vote's happening next week and the whole game looks as though it's going to be torn apart. And that is, a power struggle, an agreed struggle between players and administrators and provincial unions.
Well, I mean, I'm not really well enough informed on that particular issue to make a huge comment. All I would say about that is alignment within a union or within territory, or whichever you want to call it, is critical. And if you don't get the interests of the whole sport aligned, you're going to struggle. The idea, and I take off, I remember I've been in the game a long, long time, and I can remember a very well-known administrator in another country saying, well, as long as the national team, fill in the blank, is successful, it will all trickle down. Well, anyone who's looked at the game in the world, globally, in the last 25 years will know that is absolutely incorrect. There is very, very little evidence of that happening, if any. And what you do, I mean, we have the same debate in England where I worked for a long time as well. How do you balance out the needs of privately owned clubs, so different again, with the national team? And, the answer, and what we tend to end up is, in England, they go the other way. They play too many games because they're desperate to make the sums add up instead of actually looking at the way they should regulate it to make the spending match the expenditure and then grow as the game grows, or decline as the game declines, and adjust your costs accordingly. It's different down here. Here it's much more sort of look at the increased number of test matches. Well, that just swallows more and more and more weeks. And they say, oh, well, we need the money. That's a real short-term thinking. It really is. In the end, you squeeze other parts, don't be surprised if they lose their value. And that's my argument, I suppose. That was my observation after 2 seasons in it. I think it's still a great comp on the field. I think it in some ways, because it's tighter geographically, it should be growing in strength. But it's the predominant one is I don't understand. For example, and I know it's within the CBA, but coming from Europe, a 14-game schedule and you have rest weeks, and players have to stand down. I mean, you're serious? What message do you think that is sending to be? This game is meant to be like every sport. It's about audience. It's about people who watch it. They are the predominant stakeholder. Okay, and my observation would be we have, and this is not a New Zealand, Australian, or any other country observation, it's a general observation, we have lost sight of that absolutely central truth.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Blah, 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 blah. Miles Davis joins us every single Wednesday. And we thought we'd do something different today. I just thought I'd give him a list. I'd just throw some topics, throw some names, throw some sporting headlines at him and see how he reacts. In no particular order. I got a top 10. I'm going to give you 10 topics and I want to know what you think quickly about each one of these. In no particular order. Manchester City, 4 titles in a row. There's an asterisk beside it. Should there be an asterisk beside it, or should we be celebrating the greatness of this side 6 and 7 years?
Well, it's a money-corrupt game at the moment, so perhaps you can do. But I think the best analogy I've seen is with Lance Armstrong. He won 7 in a row, and now they're saying that City basically are the footballing version of Lance Armstrong. And when are they going to get penalised for it?
They won't be. No, they're not going to be. No, they're not going to be. No, they're not going. I mean, this is the thing, Miles. I mean, from what I've been told, and what would I know, but I've been told by a guy who knows a guy who's very connected up at Man City that they have overwhelmed the Premier League with lawyers, with law firms, and can tie this up for well over a decade. The Premier League can't compete with their lawyers, and so this is all just going to quietly fade away.
Yeah, I know, but the rest of the footballing game will be up in arms, but it won't matter. And again, it's the fans that suffer. And that's another thing I meant to say quickly about the rugby thing, is the fans don't seem to be taken into consideration. And the professional game is about the bloody fans, not about the players, not about the owners of the franchises.
Xander Schauffele, spell the guy's name if you can't remember it.
Xanderschufele.
Something like that,
Something
anyway.
Like that,
Wasn't
anyway.
it a brilliant clutch putt that he hit in that the very last shot on the 18th, mate?
He seems like quite a likeable guy.
I agree.
His name sounds something like that you furtively do in the privacy of your own room. I'm going to have a quick Xander Schauffele.
Oh, Lord.
But you can't not like him. I reckon, because he's one of those sort of nice guys, and maybe it's just showing that occasionally the nice guy does finish first.
Meanwhile, very similar name, Scotty Scheffler. How is this going to end the court case?
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, if you're the world number one and you're going to a big tournament and suddenly there's some, copper in your way going, no, mate, I've got to get to this thing. I've got a tea time. Get out of my bleeding way. I can understand his frustrations. I don't know exactly. I'd love to have been there and seen exactly what went on. But it'll be smoothed over. It's not as if he's killed anyone. I think Tiger did a hell of a lot worse and he's still invited to all the tournaments.
Gareth Southgate / Marcus Rashford. The England boss has left Rashford out of the Euro squad. Good idea or not?
Yes. I mean, you're a United fan. You've watched the way Rashford, he was brilliant. He went really off the boil. Then when he was copping stick, he came back again. But now he looks disinterested. He's lacking in form. He spent more time trying to feed kids than trying to put the ball in the back of the net, which is not necessarily a bad thing to be doing. But he didn't deserve a place in that side. There's far too much, in-form attacking talent in England to include him. And the biggest relief I thought was, and he called him Hendo, is Jordan Henderson being dropped. And when he calls him Hendo, you know that's an unhealthy relationship, and that is why that very average footballer has been in that squad for so long.
European Championships, are you going to win this? Are you finally going to do what the women were able to do that the men haven't been able to do, which was win a major international trophy?
Well, we have won one.
But it was back in 66.
It was a while,
yeah, it was a while ago.
It was in black and white,
Yeah.
but it still counts.
No.
We should do, but with Southgate at the helm, I doubt it. I mean, I said the attacking talent. In my lifetime, I can't remember the depth of attacking talent that we've got. But unfortunately, you need a manager that wants to play that way and wants to get the ball to those guys, but he doesn't. You know, when Harry Kane is getting touches inside his own half and Jordan Pickford's getting more touches than Harry Kane, you know that you're in trouble.
The Phoenix, I want to talk about the team in a second, but first the crowd. We've had instances over the last couple of years which to me demonstrate clearly that New Zealanders love events when it comes to sport. We'll pack out a stadium for the Women's World Cup final. We'll pack it out for the Women's Football World Cup. We'll pack it out for the Phoenix. I'm not sure, unless the Hurricanes can host a final, that they will actually sell out the cake, and the All Blacks will against Australia later in the year. What is this telling you about New Zealand sports audiences, though? Am I right? You've got to put a big occasion next to it, and then people will go.
Yeah, I mean, they do. They do come out and support it. I mean, the Football World Cup just blew me away. Some of the really almost like non-event games were getting huge crowds. But maybe it's the novelty thing. I don't know. Maybe there's that novelty. I mean, you and I were at that, so even at North Harbour in '99 for the under-17.
Yeah, it was packed out, mate. Sold out, yeah.
And they had to even open up an extra end. I think it's about 23,000 ended up going there, you know, to watch Brazilian and Australian under-17s play each other. So I think it's the novelty effect has a bit of a sort of a draw factor about it. But they do like an occasion. And the atmosphere there was just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, and if you look at the Bahrain game in 2009, and you look at that game there, and I think it was at 2009 or 10 as well. I was at the game, I think it was the Newcastle Jets.
That was the game,
and I think the crowd was even bigger. Than that one, and that atmosphere was fantastic as well. I think football does lend itself, attracts maybe a slightly more raucous, less sort of self-effacing crowd, so it adds to the atmosphere there. But yeah, it shows that Kiwis will turn up and support things, A, if they're winning, and B, if it's something unique.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do though is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
That is a disgusting act.
The Platform.